Hi everybody and welcome to week two's session. This week we're focusing on stakeholder theory and the nature of the firm. Stakeholder theory is a fairly fundamental concept in the study of sustainability because it raises this issue not just of shareholders but of stakeholders, that organisations have a range of people and other organisations that have an interest in that business. A stakeholder is typically defined as somebody who can affect or is affected by the organisation in question. And Ed Freeman, a well-known American academic who has generated and refined stakeholder theory, has done a lot of thinking into this concept of stakeholders, stakeholder theory and stakeholder mapping. One of the first tasks, in fact your first assessment task of the module, is to generate a stakeholder map. So this week the module asks you to demonstrate an understanding of stakeholder theory because this notion of organisations not just having shareholders but having a range of stakeholders with different power, different legitimacy, different relevance, etc. is really key. To understand the impact of different stakeholders and stakeholder theory on sustainable business practice. Also, one of the objectives with this week is to discuss the influences of internal and external business environments on sustainability implementation. So this notion that there is a market environment that the business operates, but there is also a non-market environment, an environment that is shaped by political concerns, by legal concerns, and by a range of other concerns, social and environmental, for example. And the Barron reading will discuss this in more detail. Again, we touch upon the paradigm change required in the transformation of business sustainability, or rather Ed Freeman does. And we also talk a bit about frameworks for supporting business sustainability and some of the indices. In terms of the readings, again, the textbook chapter 2, this is I've said in the intro, this is a very topical and recent Australian textbook that's done a great job in pulling together issues around sustainability. So again, I hope being less than a year old, I hope the content is relevant and interesting and recent, which is important. I've given you two readings, two academic readings on stakeholder theory, the first by Donaldson and Preston and the second by Mitchell, Agel and Wood. And these are two seminal papers, I suppose, on stakeholder theory developed from the initial idea by Ed Freeman. And they talk a bit about different frameworks for mapping and prioritising stakeholders. And you might choose to use one of those in your first assignment. I also give you a simple paper written by Ed Freeman on managing for stakeholders. But you're going to look at some videos of Ed in action. He's an interesting character, as you'll see from the videos. But he's going to talk to you about what is stakeholder theory, what are stakeholders, and also a stakeholder approach to value creation, which is implicit in the model. Just in terms of stakeholders, we look at an organisation that has developed its sustainability strategy and indeed structured its reporting around stakeholders, and that's Westpac. Westpac Banking Corporation, officially as of a few weeks ago, the world's most sustainable company. And I've given you the article to read about that. And in 2008, they generated a stakeholder impact report. And again, I've made that available to you just to get a sense of what stakeholders look like in action. Then a little bit of a case study from the textbook on Pacific brands and how the role of stakeholders differs and changes. And again, in our weekly forum, we look at guns, another relatively topical case, and look at how various stakeholders and themes emerge in the guns debacle and how it shaped the response by guns and indeed the response of NGOs and also the High Courts to what was going on. So overall, I hope the week gives you a fairly broad picture of what are stakeholders, this notion of stakeholder theory, why it's important. It's a great tool to analyse and assess who are your key stakeholders. If we think back to the disaster in the Gulf of Mexico 3 or 4 years ago, where BP had their deep water well just leaking oil, and we think about how their stakeholder map looked before the disaster and after the disaster. That would have been an interesting comparison, and had they done some detailed stakeholder mapping and understood who they might impact with such a disaster, whether they would have changed their strategy and indeed been quite as keen to pursue these deep water drills. So look, hopefully an overview on stakeholder theory. It's a very useful tool to analyse your business, not just from a sustainability perspective, but from a generic perspective. And I hope it gives you, again, a good foundation in what is a core concept in sustainability and a core tool that large corporations and also smaller businesses are using to assess who are their key stakeholders and why are they bothering about sustainability. So again, I hope you enjoy this week. Ed Freeman's a fun character, so he'll keep you awake, and I look forward to reading your initial stakeholder maps and analyses. Thanks very much.